Okay, so now let's go over Iran. Iran is a theocracy. And a theocracy is good in that it creates cohesion in society, and they are able to survive major calamities because of their faith, okay? So even though Americans and Israelis are destroying a lot of Iranian infrastructure, the Iranian people are still united. But a theocracy is bad because it can lead to extremism. And extremism can divide a population, okay? So it's possible that as this war continues, you have a small minority of the population who become extremists, and they alienate everyone else, okay? The grand strategy is Shia exceptionalism. And the idea here is that the Iranians are Shia Muslims. And Shia Muslims believe that only a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad can lead the Muslim world, can become caliph, okay? And the Sunni Muslims, who are the majority in the Muslim world, don't believe that. They believe that anyone who's qualified can become caliph. So for the longest time, the Shia and the Sunnis have been at war with each other. And Saudi Arabia is the center of the Sunni Muslim world, and Iran is the center of the Shia Muslim world. And so what Iran is trying to do is topple Saudi Arabia and become the leader of the entire Muslim world, because that is what their destiny is, okay? The attack vectors for Iran are the terrain, their faith, and the proxies, okay? The proxies include the Houthis, the Hezbollah, and Hamas, okay? And the pawns, of course, are the drones and missiles. All right, so that is the Iranian situation. And what's important to understand is the cultural origins. Okay, sorry, so this is the entire Muslim world. And what Iran's trying to do is trying to unite all of them together. Okay? So something you need to appreciate about the Iranians is that they have two major cultural traditions. The first is Zoroastrianism. And Zoroastrianism was the first eschatological religion in the world. And that they believe that there is an end of the world, Judgment Day. And at Judgment Day, those who live the truth, Asha, will ascend to heaven, and those who live the lie, the Drush, will descend into hell. So what's important is not to become wealthy or powerful or famous. It's not about achievement. It's about being true to yourself and being true to God, okay? To live a good life. Because at the end of time, you'll be rewarded. Okay? That's what they believe. The other thing is they believe in martyrdom, okay? So, as I mentioned, the Shia believe that only a descendant, only a blood relative of the Prophet Muhammad can be caliph. So this is Imam Hussein, who's the grandson of the Prophet. And he rebelled against the caliph. And so the caliph sent this huge army against him. And he was surrounded, and he had very few soldiers, but they fought to the death anyway, okay? Because they believe what's important is to die for your faith. And so this is a battle of Karbala. And so, in other words, because of these traditions, you have both the Zoroastrian tradition that believe in Judgment Day. You also have the Shia tradition, which believes in martyrdom. The Iranians are not afraid to fight to the death. Yes, the Americans and Israelis have bigger weapons, they have more soldiers, they have more money. It doesn't matter. What's important is to fight for what you believe in, to set a good example for future generations. Okay? So that's the Iranian system. And that's why the Iranians will never surrender in this war, no matter how bad it gets. The last country I want to talk about is Israel. Okay? Okay. So Israel, it is a democracy and a theocracy, okay? Sorry. Okay, so it is a democracy as well as a theocracy. And the way you destroy Israel is you cause it to enter a civil war. All right? And it's actually not that hard because right now Israel is a very fractured society. The grand strategy is something called the Greater Israel Project. So the Israelis believe that in the Bible, it says that God promised their ancestor Abraham all of the Middle East, stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates. And that's what they must achieve. Okay, so they're fighting this war not to defeat Iran, but to achieve the Greater Israel Project. The attack vectors are the Bible, the Mossad, and the Jewish diaspora. Okay, so Israel doesn't have that many people, 8-9 million people. It's a very small country. But it has three major advantages. The first advantage is the Bible, in that there are many Christians who believe that Israel is what God promised the Jewish people. And therefore the Jewish people have a right to be in Israel and do whatever they want, because that is what God promised them, okay? Then you have Mossad. And so Mossad is the most effective intelligence agency in the world. And what they're very good at doing is infiltration. And they're good at co-opting, bribing, and blackmailing the elites of different nations. And this is especially true in the Middle East, okay? And then you have the diaspora. The Jews are everywhere around the world, and so they become very important recruits from Mossad, but they're also very wealthy, so they can finance Israel and its mission to create the Greater Israel Project. And of course, the pawns are everyone else. Okay? So Mossad is very good at infiltrating different nations and creating conflict in those nations in order to benefit Israel. All right? Okay. So this is the Greater Israel Project, and this is the end goal of the Israelis. All right? So the Greater Israel Project stretches from the Nile to the Euphrates. What's important is that it also encompasses parts of Turkey, all of Syria, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, and parts of Saudi Arabia, okay? And then Iraq as well. So this war in the Middle East is actually helping Israel move towards the Greater Israel Project. Because what is happening is that Iran is basically destroying the GCC, okay? And maybe Turkey will enter the war at some point, in which case this will make Turkey vulnerable to attack from Israel, okay? So what Israel is very good at doing are creating false flag operations. False flag operations. And the idea is that, listen, what you want is the entire Middle East at war with each other. So you create as much conflict as possible, right? So the idea is that the Iranians don't actually have to attack the GCC because the Israelis will do it for them and blame it on the Iranians, okay? So this conflict will only get worse and worse because it benefits Israel to have as much conflict as possible in the Middle East, okay? And underpinning Israel society is something called the Kabbalah. Okay, so this is something called the Tree of Life, and I'll explain more later on in the semester about what the Kabbalah is, because it's very important. But there's certain things I'll point out about the Kabbalah, okay? The first thing that I'll point out is that in the tradition of the Kabbalah, there's only two things that matter. There's the creator and there's the created. Okay? In other words, Israel does not care about the world. Israel only cares about its relationship with God. As long as Israel is favored by God, they're happy. Okay? That's the first thing I'll point out. Second thing I'll point out is that this Kabbalah, the tree of life, it is the basis for the entire universe, okay? This Kabbalah shows you where the universe came from and where it's going. And the main logic of the universe is the movement of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Okay? This is the fractal that underpins the tree of life, which underpins the entire universe, okay? You can see how you have these fractals going on, okay? Okay? So in other words, what the people who believe in Kabbalah believe is that there is an inevitable process to the universe. And you can't stop it. What you can do is you can accelerate the process. All right? So if the movement is thesis, antithesis, synthesis, one way to understand this is for us to be good, we must first be evil, okay? Because what evil does is it annoys God, and God punishes you, and then you seek forgiveness from God, and then God forgives you, and then you become better. Okay? But the thing to remember is you must first commit sin in order to redeem yourself. And you can't stop this process. What you can do is you can accelerate this process. So this is very different from the Russian tradition. The Russian tradition believes in the concept of the katechon, right? Which is to stop the Antichrist, which is like, let's stop people from behaving badly. Whereas the people in the Kabbalah believe, no, it's important to behave badly because that is the path to God. That's the path to wisdom. That's the path to enlightenment and redemption. Okay? It's something that we'll discuss more in the future, okay? And this helps us explain why Israel is behaving the way it is behaving in the Middle East. First of all, what other people think of Israel doesn't matter. What matters is God, okay? What God thinks of Israel. Second thing is that it's important to do evil in order to ultimately redeem yourself from this evil. And the only force that can redeem you is God, okay? So Israel is committing all this evil because then God will humble Israel by sending the world against it, and then the Israelis will beg for forgiveness, and that is what will cause a reunion between the Jewish people and God, okay? And the third thing is, in this system, goodness does not mean to avoid sin. That's impossible. Goodness means to accelerate this natural process into sin so that Israel can be redeemed at the end of days. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so what I'm trying to explain here, what is very important is that each of these four different players, United States, Russia, Iran, and Israel, they have their own worldview. They have their own understanding. And that's what drives their actions. Okay? And the other thing to remember is that what's really interesting between these four worldviews is that they're actually not in conflict with each other. Okay? And these four worldviews, it's what's going to drive geopolitics for the next 5 to 10 years. And because they are galvanized into achieving their worldview, this forces the world to go along, even though the world may not want to go along. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So what I will do next week is talk about the civil war going on in the world between artificial intelligence and finance. Okay? And Trump is visiting China in about a week's time. So we'll also look at the relationship between the United States and China as well. Okay? Any questions? All right.